Good evening and welcome to the City of Farmers Branch Planning and Zoning Commission study session. It is presently 6 p.m., Monday, the 22nd of April, 2024. I'd first like to begin with thanking the commissioners for their service and also a recognition that it is Earth Day, so nice to recognize that today. We'll start this evening with item A1, discuss regular agenda items, which brings us to item C1, consider approval of the April 8th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners, any comments, edits, errors?
Nothing this time. It was perfect.
All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to our public hearings. Item D1 is actually postponed, so we will hear that next meeting. We will conduct a public hearing, consider the request for a specific use permit amendment for existing residence hotel on approximately 1.98 acres located at 4022 Parkside Center Boulevard within the Planned Development District PD 64, and take appropriate action. And I assume that applicant maybe just didn't have all the materials together and a few more,
They had some changes.
changes needed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. We will move to item D2, conduct a public hearing and consider the request to amend various sections of our comprehensive zoning ordinance related to development standards and expirations for site plans and take appropriate action. Who'll be presenting this one this evening?
Sarah will be presenting that tonight.
Excellent.
Yeah, any questions that anyone may have?
I do, yeah. So let's see, I'm on number 4. So if there's construction required, needs to be started within 2 years, and then the director may extend by a year. Makes sense. Then we go to the next one, if no new construction, and it goes all the way down to 6 months, which seems really short, and then there's not the same caveat that the director can extend, for some periods, for another period. So I would suggest that on both of those, you have the director have the option to do an extension. And just wondering if 6 months, is that enough time,
Yeah, do you want me to take that?
Either way.
Yeah.
I would
Oh,
say
yeah, sure.
6 months is in line with what we require for specific use permits.
Okay.
And it's really rare that you would even see a site plan where no new construction is required. That would typically be a specific use permit because it would be, you've got an existing building, maybe the use is changing or the floor plan is changing. And
Right.
our existing ordinance states 6 months for those.
Okay.
So it seems to make more sense, especially when you're not dealing with any type of new construction.
So then I still would suggest to number 5, adding the ability of the director to extend if, for whatever reason, it comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. And we could add something like that. You'll want to make that a part of the recommendation. I would add that as part of the recommendation. So if y'all do recommend for approval with the recommendation, or with the condition that, that be added to that particular item number. We could definitely look at that. I don't think that's, I don't know, from my perspective, I don't see why.
Just
that-
flexibility. is all it is.
Flexibility is
Yeah.
all it adds. Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I have a question. I noted that the staff was going to do some research with other cities. Could you tell us what cities you contacted and generally what you found in your research?
Sure, absolutely. And Sarah was going to go through that in the presentation, but I can't tell you right now. I mean, we could wait for the presentation or
And wait,
and I'll just let you know right now, Commissioner Addison, Carrollton, Dallas, and Midlothian were the 4 that would be looked at. But we'll definitely dive more into that during the presentation.
Any additional questions for staff that we need for study session? Okay, well, with that, we will come back then to item A2, receive a presentation on upcoming training opportunities. Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely. Presentation here. Okay. All right, well, thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. Brian Campbell, Senior Planning Technician here. Just to provide y'all a with a quick presentation over a couple of training opportunities that we have for the Planning and Zoning Commission. So first of all, we have the state conference for the Texas American Planning Association coming up this October, specifically October 16th through the 18th. It'll be in Allen, Texas at the Waters Creek Convention Center. For more information, you can visit this hyperlink here, which I will email to you all.
And Brian, just to add to that too, we can, from the city's perspective, if any of the commissioners want to attend this, obviously we would cover that cost for
Absolutely.
anyone who attends.
Yes.
Absolutely.
We hope you all do.
I'll be in Switzerland.
Oh.
You're gonna have to come back.
You had to tell us that?
Well, we hope to see most of you all there.
Right, there you go.
And then coming up this summer on Friday, July 26th, the Midwest section is hosting a training specifically for planning and zoning commissioners in North Richland Hills here at the NRH Center. If you have any additional questions about that or about the conference, you can email me. I actually sit on the executive board of the Midwest section, so very excited to be collaborating with the North Central section on both of these events. Just to give you all a little bit of an idea, so the Midwest section covers Tarrant County and those counties sort of west of the DFW area, and the North Central section covers Dallas County and those areas and counties east of DFW. That's all I had. If you all have any other additional questions, I'll be happy to take them.
I'd say,
Otherwise,
yeah, if you could send out an agenda,
absolutely.
that'd be great.
Yeah.
Amber, is the second one the Midwest? Is that the one that Pat and I took? Okay.
Yeah, and so if you wouldn't mind for those, since you had the privilege of attending that, if you wouldn't mind, saying a couple words, your thoughts on it, if you would recommend it, that might be helpful for commissioners to hear
Yeah.
your experience.
Yeah, I actually would definitely recommend it. I mean, I kind of felt like I was drinking from a fire hose that day because it was just so much really pertinent, good information. And I felt like my hand at the end of the day was really tired because I was just scribbling notes. But I thought the most interesting part was who was the attorney that was talking about ethics, which was really fascinating. And then even just the basic stuff of taking a packet that we get from planning department and how you go through it and where you start and what you should be looking for was really, really insightful and really helpful. So if you can take the time off from work, it's definitely worth the $35 or whatever it was. I mean, it was, and you had lunch too. So, I mean, so it wasn't like, it was a pretty cushy day, but it was also really interesting. So, You want to add anything, Pat?
No, I agree completely. I'm really glad I went, and I was glad
Yeah.
at the time, and lunch was fair, so.
Yeah.
But it was definitely worthwhile.
Yeah.
I assume that they don't cover exactly the same topics at each one, or is it the same speakers doing the same thing, or is it, do we know? if
We'd
it's-
have to look at the agenda.
I think it varies, but yeah, once we have an agenda, I will definitely pass that
Okay,
out.
great, thanks.
Yeah,
But I will want to go again.
absolutely. And we would pay for y'all to go to that one too, of course. So, well, thank you all.
Thank you. And any further questions on either of these? As we're talking about educational opportunities, I will also, I think it's appropriate to bring up here that there are, tons of additional opportunities. So if ever you're interested, feel free to ask me because I tend to be, because I'm also sending these things to my students and that sort of thing. I will say one in particular that I think I forwarded on to the team is coming up on the 2nd of May. And this comes from ULI, which is the Urban Land Institute. It's at 3 p.m. and I believe that's a Friday. It's being held at the Communities Foundation of Texas, which is on 75 near SMU, if you're familiar. And it is their showcase of their mini technical assistance program. So what ULL does as a service to the community is various nonprofits or municipalities present an issue or a problem they're having in their community or a challenge, and they actually pull together an interdisciplinary team of experts that analyze that issue and provide their guidance and recommendations around it. So to my mind, it's a great place to find innovative solutions and a lot of cutting edge research and work being done by consultants and professionals, but also on very local issues, some of which I don't know the issues, but likely are similar to what we face here in Farmers Branch. So much like our kind of field trips where we see, you know, what other communities are doing, this is kind of, to my mind, a similar opportunity, but with the extra effect of, you know, these experts in the field explaining why they're taking these policy decisions or why they're making these recommendations, which I think can be very helpful in our understanding of you know, concerns that come before us. So if you have other questions, feel free to ask me, but I thought it appropriate with it fits our agenda item of an educational opportunity, and
Yes.
wanted to share that as well.
And I think we could send that out to everybody, the one you're speaking of
Yeah.
also. We can
Yes.
send that out to everybody maybe as soon as tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and you have it, right? Because I
Mhm.
forwarded
I
it
do.
to the team.
Yep,
Okay,
sure did.
great.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you all. Any other educational opportunities or, you know, suggestions from folks? All right, we will then move to item A3, receive an update regarding Planning and Zoning Commission minutes format.
Yes.
It's me again.
All right, thank you, Brian.
Absolutely. Good evening. Again, Brian Campbell, Senior Planning Technician, just here to provide y'all with a quick update to our meeting minutes. So in following City Council's lead, we're going to be changing the format slightly. So now we will be providing a link to the video on the first page of the meeting minutes. And so we're going to go to more of what's called an action minutes format, where it won't necessarily go line by line with the questions and answers. It'll more focus on what the action was that y'all took on a specific item and what the outcome was and who the applicant was and the big picture details like that. And so this provides you an example of what a write-up of one of the cases would look like.
And Brian, if I could just add to that,
Of
that,
course.
you know, this is really more consolidated, it's more concise. That's exactly how the city council does it. Instead of us giving you the minutes that's line by line, we'd much rather not try to reinvent the wheel because the video is the video. And so that's really where we should be sending folks. If anybody wants to know what was said or what was talked about, it creates less errors, less confusion. So if you could go back to that first slide, Brian.
Sure.
Yeah, so that will always be at the top. We'll always have something that's citing the location of this video of what's being recorded. And if anybody has questions about minutes, that's where you can go, or that's where the public will definitely be able to go and see. So again, more concise, more to the point, and it's following suit with city council.
Indeed.
Can I make one suggestion, and I don't know if it's possible, but
Sure.
when I'm looking at minutes and I go back to, I'd like to see what happened on this issue. Is it possible to say in a section, this is at 1 hour and 33 minutes into the video? So that you could go right to that section and watch the portion of the video that's pertinent to the area of interest, rather than, because most people don't have 3-4 hours to sit and
Yeah,
watch all. I don't know if
Sure.
it's possible, but
we can look into that.
Yeah, we can look into it, and I think, Sarah, it's already set
Yeah, I
for,
think when you watch it in Granicus, it's timestamped, so
Right.
there should be an agenda on the right. You can click on the item, it should take you directly.
and it'll
there.
take directly to.
Oh.
Yeah,
I've watched them before. I didn't realize. I saw the agenda on the right. I didn't know they were.
Now, if you're watching it
Yeah.
on YouTube, it's different, but if you're watching it in Granicus, Granicus is what you have actually pulled up on your
Yeah.
screen right now. So if you pull that up there, you can go directly to that
That's something to do every day.
Yeah,
Thank
but I
you.
mean, if it helps to put the timestamps in the write-up in the minutes, I mean, we can look into doing that as well.
That's something we could look at.
I'm not trying to create a lot of work, but if you have that data, it'd be,
Sure, I would also take go through Granicus and actually,
Yeah.
you may find that it's very simple
Okay.
to just go directly to that location for that one particular item, and it'll take you directly to it.
I'm looking at it now, there's the agenda on the right, but under the video, there's an index and it lists every item, and that is a hyperlink.
hyperlink into the section of the video?
So I think, yeah, when you click on it, it'll take you to that, straight to that agenda item.
Okay, cool. Then that is not needed.
Okay, all right.
Even better, all right.
Uh,
Problem solved.
yeah, that's all I have
It was
for
an
that.
education issue.
So I have one comment, just sort of related to this.
Uh-huh.
So when email out the agenda, the packet for the week, and then you go online, and then go to that page, and there's like 3 or 4 items, and you click it, and it downloads it to your computer, right? Makes sense. But they always download with generic names. It's like presentation-9. So I have to go through and go, I have to add the date to the beginning, add the case number, because otherwise it's the same as it was the week before, which was presentation-8. So I'm just wondering, could you name your the files more, give them a little bit of context, like put the date and the case number and then presentation or something?
Yeah, let us look
Something
at
we
that.
might be able to
Yeah.
look
Right,
at.
just there's
Right.
generic names, yeah.
No, I'm glad you bring that up.
Yeah.
You brought that up. Well, let us look at that. I'm not. I have to go through it and actually see it.
Okay, yeah, check it out.
I'll check it out for sure. Absolutely. We'll put that on our list.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything
Thank
else?
you for that. Any further inquiries? Seeing none, we'll move then to item A4, discuss agenda items for future.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you as well. Discuss agenda items for future Planning and Zoning Commission consideration. Any items to
I
consider?
do have one.
Yes?
Would like to discuss sort of the process behind deciding when an applicant comes forward versus, oh, we need to add something to the table, thinking specifically we've done malls and card games. Because it just always, it kind of comes in, there's no applicant, so there's nobody, there's no other side to it. So there's just something about the process that leaves me wanting. So I just wonder if we could discuss that in the future.
Absolutely. We could put it more than likely, maybe possibly on the next study session item. We just kind of dive into the hows and the whys
Okay.
of why we do it this direction, or why we do it this particular way or this particular process. Just so the commission is a little bit more familiarized with that. That's not a problem at all.
Okay,
Sure. Absolutely.
thank you.
Any other thoughts, items for consideration?
I have another kind of a process question, but like, the card thing just came out, and kind of the first we heard of it was fully baked. There was draft legislation, draft rules, and all these things. And so we don't see things until it's all done and kind of cast in concrete. And then when we're talking about things, we're just kind of chipping away at things at the margin. Is there any way we can see more of the way the sausage is made in these things and see what y'all are doing? I know you're all working hard all the time, and I don't know if that's part of a civic process at all. So I just show my own ignorance on how these things work.
No.
But I would be interested in having more visibility into what's coming up for the next meeting and the meeting after that, so we can be thinking about it
Right.
and preparing questions before we get a fully baked document 2 days before we have to vote on it.
Right. Yeah, so the process couple of things on that. We've started this, there's a link on our website now called Be Informed, which includes all of the cases that are, and it's, I don't know if somebody wants to bring up on our website, just so the commission is, we'll wait till she brings that up. But while she's working on that, yeah, we have a lot of projects that are in the works. Nothing that has been scheduled to go to P and Z just yet. That Be Informed link on that side there just talks about the future agenda items that we have for city council. And then it's essentially pretty much like our case tracker for the most part. So we'll have projects on there that have just a very, just, again, doesn't go into much detail because, again, these projects are completely 100% under review. You know, when you brought up about the card room also, you bring up a good point when we talked about malls and card rooms. When we get these new and enlisted uses, it would be nice to do a study session before, right? A lot of times, which I would love to do, and I'm all for, 9 times out of 10, the applicant is like, I need to move on this. I'm ready to go. I really want to see this thing get through. Because they're dealing with timing issues also. So we have the option to, obviously, again, it's not baked into our regulation that you have to bring it as a study session first, especially when we're dealing with new enlisted uses. So normally, again, what we'll do is instead of, if we don't have it listed, if it's not, within our CZO, we're always going to go and start working with the attorney to go ahead and draft something, and then bring that directly to P and Z, and then ultimately to City Council, skipping the study session part. If I had something in my CZO that forced me to go through and do a study session prior to, I'd love to do that, because I think it makes all the sense in the world, instead of just being kind of surprised by it. That's something that we can always push applicants. We can try to say, hey, this is the process
be
that we
great.
need to do, especially if I don't have something that I can point to that says I have to. But as a city, we could just make that determination, when we get these new and enlisted uses and say, okay, we feel the need to do study sessions before we start moving into the new and enlisted ordinance, and figuring out how to classify. But that really is the whole point of the new and enlisted section, is that, we're supposed to get feedback from City Council, we're supposed to get the public's feedback, and then ultimately, if it gets tabled, it gets tabled. If it doesn't, if it gets to move on to the next section, which would be going to City Council, still would be in a public setting, so we still get to hear from the public. And then that really tells us where that new and enlisted use needs to be placed. And then ultimately, the applicant can then apply after that, knowing if it's going to require an SUP or if it's going to be by right or if it's going to require a PD. It all depends. So I think a lot of times applicants are looking to try to move along as fast as they can.
I think it could be very much to their detriment, right? Because
It could be.
if they're on the side of something that
Sure.
could in any way be emotional, the first amount of energy you're going to get back are the people who are opposed. And so if we push it too quickly, they're not, I think I get that, I feel like they don't really I think they could have a better shot if it was a little slower and we could get a little more data so that if it's emotions, we can put data against that,
I am 1,000% behind that. I would love to, if we get a new use in our city or something that's unlisted, I would love to go, I would prefer actually, personally, just my own personal opinion, I would much rather go through study sessions with the P&Z, with City Council, and get feedback. But then again, that takes time, setting it up to go to P&Z, then getting on a City Council agenda, and then ultimately creating the ordinance, which takes some time.
Right.
And then bringing it back to P&Z to get y'all's recommendation, then ultimately getting City Council. You're talking months, which is fine, which I am 100% for. Again, there's nothing that says that the process just basically says when we have a new and enlisted use, we're to just work with our, we obviously work with our attorney, draft the ordinance, get the staff report together, and then bring it to P&Z as a public hearing. That's the typical process. At least that's how our code is written. But I like y'all's ideas. I love your ideas, actually.
Do you have priorities, like ones and twos and threes, on these case numbers?
No, because it's hard to prioritize these in the sense of some of these cases that are sitting out here right now, we've had for a while, actually. We've had for over a year that have been sitting with us. Some of them we've only had for a few months. It all depends on the review process as far as whenever we get our review, we usually have a 2-week turnaround. So we turn our comments back always in 2 weeks. It's when the applicant decides, hey, okay, I'm ready to go ahead and move forward on something, and they provide that information back to us. So it's hard to say what's considered priority and what's not. Everything is just basically under review.
So if somebody looks at this list on the outside, they go to the website, look at the list, they don't have any idea when this may come to planning and
it's-
zoning or city council. I mean, there's
I
just no
mean,
way.
the only thing that I would caution is that if we put months on here, if we say, this is something that's planned for April, and let's say, for instance, we don't get the information back from the applicant, we can't get it in
I
April.
understand.
We'll have to wait till May. And so there's definitely, and which we don't mind. I mean, it's just a matter of just updating the table to say, well, it's not happening, it's gonna happen in May instead of April, but,
How do you know which one to work on first? I mean, does the applicant direct your work process?
they essentially kind of do in a very indirect way. I mean, once we get information back from them and we're ready to finish our review, once comments are done, let me say it that way, we have this comment period where we go back and forth. Not always, but in some instances, we have comments, they provide changes, staff may have additional comments, or they may have comments for us. Not until comments are addressed do we actually start looking at putting it onto the docket. Because if we do it prematurely and we don't want to bring you something incomplete, or we don't want to bring you something that's still being worked out. No different, this is why one of these items we thought was worked out. I mean, today's a good example, actually.
Yeah.
We had one that was postponed because at the last minute, they came to us and said, you know what? We actually don't want to move forward. Even though we had already advertised in the newspaper, we had already done everything that we needed to do to get it onto the agenda. They came to us and said, you know what, we actually want to make these changes. Can we still move forward? If I don't have those changes, I would be bringing you an incomplete product. And I don't think that's fair, especially if we're in a public hearing
Yeah.
setting. We just can't do it. So a lot of times we're at the mercy of if the applicant is going to give us all the information we need so that we can actually put it onto the docket. Because again, we don't want to come with anything that's incomplete. So that's where, this is why y'all have me. This is why I'm hired here. I mean, it's one of these things that,
Well, I'm just thinking about the transparency so that
Sure.
when somebody, Joe Citizen, goes to the website and he
Yeah.
looks at it, he can get at least a general idea of the process.
of where they're,
In
yeah.
whether this is an A or a B or a C.
Yeah, I see where you're going with that.
Maybe there's like a disclaimer we could include that these cases are in review and they won't be scheduled until all comments are addressed. So it's more
Well,
clear to
I'm
the-
just-
Or they could always call us.
I'm
I mean,
just-
we're always happy to talk to citizens about any of these projects that are
Well,
on here.
that may generate
A lot of
too
calls.
many calls and going back and forth, and you guys are supposed to be working.
No,
You know what I'm saying? I mean, there ought to be a way that you can hang a status on something
mhm.
that is more important than the one below it, than the one below it. and so on.
Ideally, it'd be nice to see like a little bar graph next to each one that shows how far along it is in the
Yeah,
review
what-
process, how close it is to complete, to getting onto the
And
document.
that's where I'm really going,
I
is
see what you're
like
saying.
the priority,
Yeah.
if this is a A or a B or a C, C being, down the road 6 months, worry about A's and B's.
Maybe we could always show like second review or third review.
Yeah, like a status.
A status.
Yeah.
Maybe we have we could add like a column. I like the idea of doing the month, which we can always still add a month in there, but having a status column that says, okay, this is under the second review or fourth review or first review. Sometimes that kind of gives an indication of how far along they are.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, because, and it may help the people that are actually working on these items also on the outside,
Sure.
where they can, if they know there are 3 instead of 4 and they want to be a 2, they have to work hard. You know, I'm just trying, there's got to be a way you can prioritize it for your staff's sake.
Sure, sure. Let us think about that. We'll think about that. I mean, this is something that we just, and actually this came from our CMO's office or city management's office, talked about wanting to put something out there. And so it's new, but we definitely have room for making some changes to it to make it a little bit more for clarity purposes. Absolutely.
I will just add the comment that in terms of the way that you're talking about prioritization, to my mind, that is inaccurate to the spirit of planning, which is a democratized, everyone receives, the same service and care from the city. So I would be hesitant to apply the type of evaluation that it sounds like you're suggesting, which might say this person is receiving special treatment or more attention.
I'm
But I
I'm
think
looking
a
at it.
status, the way that they're talking, to my mind, is, more just, to your point, addressing the transparency of where things are in the process. But I would be very hesitant to indicate prioritization in a way that would signal that some folks are receiving differential treatment from our city staff, because they make a very concerted effort to ensure that everyone receives appropriate priority, attention, service at a very high level.
Well, transparency was where I was really coming from, so that this Joe citizen can go to the list and say, well, this looks like it changed from a 3 to a 2, so it may be coming up in the next several months, and I can pay closer attention.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm going from.
Yeah, I just wanted to make that, words matter, right? So to kind of think about that.
I mean, that's something we can always bring back to this group too. If there's more information that we want for, as we update this also, that's something that we can discuss further. Shouldn't be a problem. Sure.
Great. Well, thank you all for that lively discussion on future agenda items. With that, unless there are other comments on that, seeing none, we will move then to adjourn our study session, and we will resume in these chambers here, not downstairs because of the construction happening, at 7 p.m. With our regular meeting agenda. Thank you all. Good evening and welcome to the City of Farmers Branch Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. It is presently 7 p.m. Monday, April 22nd, 2024. I'd like to begin by thanking the commissioners for their service and a quick reminder just to speak into your mic when it is your turn to speak. Also a recognition, as we did before, that it is Earth Day prior to receiving our citizen comments. So this agenda item provides an opportunity for citizens to address the Planning and Zoning Commission on any matter that is not posted on the agenda. Anyone wishing to address the commission should complete a citizen's comments registration form and submit it to the chair prior to the start of the meeting. There is a 3-minute time limit for each citizen to speak, with a reasonable limitation on speakers on any one topic or item, with a maximum of 15 total minutes on the same topic item. Anyone wishing to speak shall be courteous and cordial. The Planning and Zoning Commission is not permitted to take action on any subject raised by a speaker during citizen comments. However, the Planning and Zoning Commission may have the item placed on a future agenda for action, refer the item to the Director of Planning for further study or action, briefly state existing city policy, or provide a brief statement of factual information in response to the inquiry. This evening, I believe we have no citizen comments forms received. No one here for citizen comments. Okay. Moving on, we'll go to our regular agenda items. Item C1, consider approval of the April 8th, 2024 Planning and Zoning Commission minutes and take appropriate action. Commissioners?
Move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
Any further discussion on the item? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you kindly. Up next, public hearing. Item D1 was actually postponed, so we will move to item D2 to conduct a public hearing and consider the request to amend various sections of the comprehensive zoning ordinance related to development standards and explorations for site plans and take appropriate action. Thank you, Sarah.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sarah Bergman, lead planner. So this discussion really started in February of this year when the City Council directed staff to start looking at an expiration process for approved site plans. We had a subsequent discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission in March during a study session meeting, and now we are back with an ordinance for your consideration and for a public hearing. And you can see here on the screen the sort of purpose of this ordinance is listed out, but the goal here is really to clean up some existing sections of our zoning ordinance and to create new deadlines for when site plans actually expire. And so the goal of this is to really eliminate situations where maybe a site plan is approved and then several years go by and there's not any construction. As we all know, a lot can change in that time frame in terms of surrounding development, city codes, market conditions, et cetera. So this is to ensure that site plans are being reviewed in the context of current development and in close proximity to when that construction actually occurs. This amendment is in line with surrounding cities. We did research regulations for several surrounding municipalities, and a few of them are shown here on the screen. You can see Dallas, Addison, Midlothian, and Carrollton all have expiration timelines ranging from 1 to 2 years. The conditions can vary a little bit. Typically, it's either the site plan expires if a building permit is not applied for, or if that building permit is not issued. So here's a couple examples. You can see Midlothian's 1 year, building permit applied for, versus Dallas at 2 year, where the building permit actually has to be issued. So for Farmers Branch, we are proposing a 2-year expiration with this ordinance. That expiration would be contingent on either a building permit being issued within 2 years of site plan approval, or if the building permit is issued but then construction never happens and the building permit expires, the site plan would also expire. And we've built in a contingency that city staff can grant extensions on a case-by-case basis for up to 1 year. I sort of skipped over this first point, but there are also several sections in the comprehensive zoning ordinance where we don't use the term detailed site plan, but maybe comprehensive site plan is mentioned, or just site plan. Both of those are a little outdated, so we want to update those and just make everything consistent across the ordinance with detailed site plan. And then in the situation where a site plan might not require new construction, such as a use or a floor plan, internal modifications, The expiration trigger would be a certificate of occupancy being issued within 6 months, which lines up with our specific use permit process. And then finally, there are some plan development districts that may have their own established expiration timelines for site plans, and so this amendment would not affect those. And finally, a notice of this zoning amendment was published in the newspaper and on the city's website, and we have not received any correspondence. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Commissioners, questions for staff?
I did have one I forgot to ask earlier. Is this in any way retroactive to site plans that have been open for some period of time?
As written, yes, it would be. If a site plan was approved over 2 years ago and no movement has happened, that would expire.
Okay.
That was my question. I was going to ask.
Got it. I'm sorry.
Is it okay?
Any further questions for staff? This is a public hearing, so with that, I'd like to open the floor for a public hearing if we do have any comments at the public hearing. Seeing none, I will remind commissioners that we will first entertain to close that public hearing.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Second, any further discussion on that item? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of closing the public hearing? All right, with that, the public hearing is closed, and we will hear action on the item.
One from the study session earlier, the suggestion that in B4, it has just a stipulation that the director may authorize one or more extensions of deadline totaling not more than one additional year. And I would recommend that that same stipulation be added to number 5, to B5, which is when no new construction is required, just to give some flexibility to the director.
So I'm hearing that you move to approve the item with the condition of an addition to item 5 of the stipulation of flexibility in extension provided by the Director of Planning.
Sounds good. So moved.
Okay?
Second.
Second, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the approval with the additional condition? All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you kindly. With that, then we will move for adjournment. It is presently 7:08 PM. Thank you all again for your service. Happy Earth Day.